What's good, everyone? OJ here, giving you guys an update for the Switch-focused Resident Evil game that was part of the massive data breach that we got last year from Capcom. Now, noted leaker Dust Golem, especially when it comes to Capcom stuff, has talked about a bunch of different things via Twitter answering questions. So we're going to skim through some of these tweets here and go over some of the new information when it comes to Resident Evil Outrage, as it's being called internally over at Capcom. Now, Dust Golem first starts off by saying that Revelations 3 is going to be coming out, or at least announced, within a year of Village's release. So that's going to be a 2021/early 2022 type of title, and it won't be called Revelations 3. The name is Resident Evil Outrage right now at this point, but it was called Resident Evil Revelations 3 at some point internally. Now, Outrage is 100% an RE Engine game, the same RE engine that's compatible with the Nintendo Switch when it comes to Monster Hunter Rise. Now, he also says that it won't be the best looking RE game, but it'll still look pretty damn good, especially on the Nintendo Switch. Now, here's some more surprising things when I heard about what was going on here with this game. He says that it had a higher budget and a lot more development time than either Resident Evil Revelations 1 or Resident Evil Revelations 2. And he also states that it's been in development for around 4 years with a budget closer to Village's, which is just kind of crazy to me because Village just looks insane, and that's a cross-gen type of game and everything. Now, he does speculate they think that they might not use the name of Revelations because they kind of wanted to break away from that because it is a little bit of a different thing. He states that it'll be more like Resident Evil Code Veronica, for example. He also goes on to say that ultimately Capcom will choose when it does when it comes to the release of the game, because right now it looks like it's a timed release for the Switch. Dust Golem also goes on to say that it's up to Capcom to see when they're going to announce the game, but he suspects that it's going to be not too far after Resident Evil Village's release. Dust Golem continues to say that it's a timed exclusive for the Nintendo Switch, and it's releasing on everything and is a cross-gen game. So we're going to see it on PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and it's into PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X, PC, all of that. Switch is going to be first and foremost. Now, he also doesn't know exactly how long the exclusivity is going to be for the game. He's not sure about that, but he just knows that it is a timed exclusive. Dust Golem then adds on that he first heard about Resident Evil Revelations 3 back in 2017 and that it would star Rebecca, and he's also updated several times over the years that it's Rebecca's game still. Now, he's semi-aware of who the second and third protagonists are too, both returning characters, but he says his lips are sealed right now at this point. Dust Golem also goes on to speculate on some of the stuff for the Resident Evil 25th anniversary. So he also said this: RE-verse in March/April, updates through the year, Village in May, which we do know about. He also talked about Infinite Darkness close to Village, live action film reboot in September, Outrage in late 2021/early 2022. That's what he has to say on there as well. So there's a lot of information to digest here. Let's first start off with the news that pretty much seems to me like it's going to be a lock here because of that data breach, and now we have these different things. Dust Golem is also the guy, I remember when Monster Hunter Rise was right about to be announced, he actually kind of called it. He said, hey, they're going to announce it at this point, and then they did with like a Monster Hunter Direct and all that. So I do believe that he's on to something here, that he definitely knows what he's talking about when it comes to Capcom, especially Resident Evil, because this is pretty much what he covers exclusively on his Twitter page. So very good stuff to hear. But this Resident Evil game for the Nintendo Switch, how it's going to have a bigger budget, 4 years worth in development, that's crazy. I mean, we're gonna have to wait and see once we see the game, but I very much welcome that. I think the Nintendo Switch, if you look at the platform, it's obviously worth it, right? So if they've been developing it since 2017, they saw the explosive growth in terms of what could happen. Maybe it started out as a smaller project and they said, okay, Switch is really blowing up. By the time that this game is done, we're going to have a huge install base to really push this game to on the Nintendo Switch. Then, of course, like Capcom, let's get people to double dip on the other platforms after the time exclusive, just like we bought multiple versions of Resident Evil Revelations Revelations first came out on the Nintendo 3DS, and there was Wii U and PS3 and 360, then also PS4, Xbox One, then it came to Switch. I think we're going to see the same thing with Resident Evil Outrage. And I feel that if they do make it a higher quality game, if they are trying to make it a bit more, that's really going to suit well, especially with how well the Switch is doing. There are a ton of Resident Evil fans on the Nintendo Switch. They released the older games, Resident Evil Revelations Collection, which did extremely well according to their standards in terms of what they wanted with a port of an old game like that. The other Resident Evil games have done extremely well. Resident Evil 4, Resident Evil 5. I don't know how 6 is done, but whatever. It's on the platform. The older ones, like something when it comes to Capcom and Resident Evil games and Nintendo, it just clicks with a lot of fans. So I'm very excited to see how this one works out, and I think that the Nintendo Switch deserves this type of game. Now, of course, it's coming to other platforms, so that's awesome as well. And I'm probably going to double dip if the game is really good. I'll probably buy it again on my Xbox Series X and play it in Dolby Atmos and all that good stuff and nice sound and all that. But definitely having a game like this, a Resident Evil game built for the Nintendo Switch, that's not a port of some other game, but it's actually built for the platform and focused on it, just like Monster Hunter Rise, is very exciting to me. That's what I wanted to see developers do from the very beginning. Obviously, it was going to take sales and time for that to get done because the Switch launched in 2017. They didn't know that it was going to be super successful, but we're starting to see that now, especially with Capcom. If we can see more stuff like this from other developers, I'd be completely down. We're seeing a lot of cool independent developers do stuff on the Switch. We're seeing some bigger games here and there, but having stuff like Monster Hunter Rise, having stuff like Monster Hunter Stories 2, having this game right here, Resident Evil Outrage, built for this system, then of course if they want, take it to other systems or just all launch simultaneously, but make sure the Switch version is up to snuff, is exactly what Switch gamers want. So I am down for a game like this, and I think it's going to be pretty good. Now, if you look at some of the other stuff that came from the Capcom leak, I know that it seems like Capcom isn't changing course. All of the major stuff so far that was leaked out, like Ghosts and Goblins and other things, has happened. Resident Evil Village coming to last gen and also the current gen, that happened as well. So there's been multiple things from that Capcom data breach that have already happened, and Capcom pretty much acknowledged that, yeah, this is a data breach. We did have that. And they also talked about in the recent investors meeting that they're not really going to change anything up from what happened. It's just going to go through like they were going to. So it definitely seems like a lot of this stuff from this data breach is going to happen. And if it doesn't happen, it was probably like in the planning phase and they maybe decided to change course. But I think that all of the big stuff, like all the Resident Evil stuff or all of the stuff that was pretty close to being released, like the Ghosts and Goblins, all that's going to happen no matter what. So it's an exciting time for Nintendo Switch fans, and I'm just hoping when it comes to the game, what they would do, kind of go more towards the focus of Resident Evil Revelations 1 and take some of the cool stuff from Resident Evil Revelations 2 and kind of combine it into one. I love the characters that you use in Resident Evil Revelations 1. I love the atmosphere that was in the game. I love the upgrades and everything. Resident Evil Revelations 2 had a little bit of a weird structure because it was segmented into episodes and then they ultimately did it all together on one disc, but it was just kind of silly how they did it. But some of the pacing with the game and kind of what you did was a little bit off, but it had a lot of cool features with the Nintendo Switch and it looked great on the platform. It looked great, it ran great. Capcom did a good job with those ports. So if they can take their experience from what they did with Resident Evil Revelations 1 and Resident Evil Revelations 2 and kind of add to that and make it even higher budget, which it definitely seems like they're doing here, that makes me excited because I love Resident Evil. I think it's great, but I'm not the biggest fan of first-person Resident Evil. So everyone's excited for Village and everything, whereas something like this that's third-person Resident Evil gets me a lot more excited to play it. Because I recently finished Resident Evil 2 Remake for the first time, and that was fantastic. Resident Evil 4 is my favorite Resident Evil game of all time. I love the Resident Evil Remake on the GameCube. I think that Resident Evil 5 is an amazing game. Those were all third-person type of games, whereas Resident Evil 7 definitely isn't my favorite type of Resident Evil game to play. I'm just not as big of a fan of it, but I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with Village. So this one has me a bit more excited than what they're doing with Village and everything. Not a knock on the game, it just has me a bit more excited because I do love Resident Evil Revelations. That's one of my favorite games in terms of Resident Evil the franchise has to offer. I think it's fantastic. I love the online multiplayer. I think that's really good too. So hopefully they kind of innovate in a lot of different areas there and they kind of keep the flow, but then also introduce some new stuff as well, because because Capcom, they really have hit their stride on the Switch, especially this year. It's like they said, okay, we're gonna go all in right now at this point as we get our games ready. So that's something that I can only kind of tip my hat to Capcom. I knew that they were planning some good stuff. I knew from the beginning, even though fans were a little bit upset because, you know, Capcom asked Nintendo to put more RAM in the system and we didn't see all the games and it was ports at first. People were upset, but it takes years to build games. It takes time. You can't sit there and think, okay, we're going to be able to take advantage of everything from the very beginning. You need to plan it out, and that's exactly what's happening here. So I'm very happy to see that I was right when it comes to Capcom and what their original plan was for the Nintendo Switch. And obviously it included the system actually getting sales, because they tried with the 3DS, they did okay on there. They tried with the Wii U just a little bit, they didn't really get much there. The Switch has been a comeback story for Capcom games on Nintendo platforms, so that's good to see. But what are you guys' thoughts on this when it comes to Resident Evil Outrage and what is going on? Are you excited for this one here? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Check out the links in the description. We've got Twitter. Go and give us a follow on there. Stay up to date on all the latest gaming news and information. Also, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and share this video if you can. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll catch you for the next one. Peace.